The ship floated in silence at the edge of known space. It was called the Horizon's Wake, and it was the first human vessel to travel this far from Earth. Captain Daniel Price stood near the large window at the front of the ship. He looked out at something that made his heart beat faster. Before him was a wall of light. It moved and twisted like a living thing. The light changed colors every few seconds, going from blue to purple to white. This was the boundary. Every alien species in the galaxy had told humans to stay away from it. They said it was death. They said nothing could survive crossing it. Daniel was 43 years old. He had gray hair at his temples and tired eyes that had seen too much. But right now, those eyes were full of wonder. He had dreamed of this moment since he was a boy reading stories about space. Behind him, the bridge crew worked at their stations. There were 12 people on the bridge and 47 total on the ship. Each one had volunteered for this mission. Each one knew they might not come back. Lieutenant Katie Morrison looked up from her screen. She was young, only 26, with short brown hair and sharp green eyes. She handled all communications for the ship. "Captain," she said, "we just got another message from the Valkyrie ambassador. He's calling us fools. He says we should turn back now while we still can." Daniel turned to face her. The Valkyrie were one of the oldest species in the galaxy. They had 7 eyes and skin like old leather. They had been traveling through space for over 50,000 years. To them, humans were like babies who had just learned to walk. "What exactly did he say?" Daniel asked. Katie read from her screen. "He said that 17 expeditions have tried to cross the boundary in the last 6,000 years. Ships from the Valkyrie, the Thondrian Collective, the Mekra, and many others. None of them ever came back. Not one single ship. He says the boundary has been forbidden space for 3,000 years. He says we are making a terrible mistake." First Officer Amanda Gray stood up from her chair. She was a tall woman with dark skin and a calm face. Nothing ever seemed to shake her. She had served with Daniel for 10 years, and he trusted her more than anyone else on the ship. 17 expeditions, Amanda said slowly. All lost. "That is not a good number, Captain." "No, it is not," Daniel agreed. "But we did not come all this way to turn back." Chief Science Officer Nathan Cole walked over to join them. He was a thin man with glasses and messy hair. He always looked like he had just woken up from a nap. But his mind was sharper than anyone Daniel had ever met. "I have been studying the boundary for the past 3 weeks, Nathan said. "I think I know why all those ships failed." Everyone on the bridge turned to look at him. "Tell us," Daniel said. Nathan pulled up a display on the main screen. It showed the boundary in great detail. Lines and numbers covered the image. "The energy in that barrier is not constant," Nathan explained. "It goes up and down in a pattern. Most of the time, the energy is so strong that it would tear any ship apart in seconds. But there are moments, short windows of time, when the energy drops to almost nothing." "How short?" Amanda asked. "About 4 minutes. It happens once every 16 hours. Nathan pushed his glasses up his nose. "Every other species that tried to cross probably flew straight in without studying it first. They hit the barrier at full strength and were destroyed instantly. But if we time it right, if we enter during one of those low points, we might survive." Katie spoke up. "Are you saying we can actually do this? We can cross where everyone else failed?" Nathan nodded slowly. "I think so. Our ship is also different from theirs. We built our hull with a special material that absorbs energy instead of letting it pass through. It was designed to protect us from radiation near stars. But it should also help us survive the barrier." Daniel walked to the center of the bridge. He looked at each of his officers in turn. These were good people. Smart people. Brave people. They had left everything behind on Earth to be here. I want everyone to understand something, Daniel said. We are about to do something that has never been done before. 17 ships tried and failed. Thousands of aliens died attempting what we are about to attempt. The entire galaxy thinks we are crazy. He paused and smiled. But that is what humans do. We try things that seem impossible. We fail, and we try again. We keep pushing until we find a way. That is how we survived on Earth for thousands of years. That is how we built ships that could travel between stars. And that is how we are going to cross this boundary. Amanda nodded. The crew already voted, Captain. 39 in favor of crossing. 8 people did not vote. No one voted against. Daniel felt pride swell in his chest. His crew believed in this mission. They believed in him. Katie, he said, send one final message to Earth. Tell them what we are about to do. Tell them that whatever happens, we went forward because that is what humans have always done. We went forward because we had to know what was on the other side. Katie typed quickly on her console. Message sent, Captain. It will reach Earth in about 3 months. Daniel looked at Nathan. How long until the next low point in the barrier? Nathan checked his calculations. 47 minutes. Good. That gives us time to prepare. Daniel sat down in his captain's chair. All hands, this is the captain. In less than 1 hour, we will attempt to cross the boundary. I want everyone at their stations. I want all systems at full power. I want you all to know that I am proud to serve with each and every one of you. The next 47 minutes passed slowly. Everyone on the ship prepared for what was coming. Engineers checked every system twice. Medical staff made sure all emergency supplies were ready. The pilots ran practice drills for emergency maneuvers. Daniel spent the time thinking about home. He thought about his sister back in Ohio and his old friends from flight school. He wondered if he would ever see Earth again. But he did not regret his choice. Some things were worth risking everything for. Finally, Nathan looked up from his screen. Captain, the energy levels are starting to drop. We have a 4-minute window starting in exactly 2 minutes. All hands, prepare for boundary crossing, Daniel announced. This is it. Everyone hold on tight. The horizon's wake moved forward. The boundary grew larger and larger on the screen until it filled everything. The light was so bright that some crew members had to look away. Energy levels at 50% and dropping, Nathan reported. 40%. 30%. Now, Captain, go now. The ship shot forward into the light. Everything went white. The hull groaned and shook. Warning alarms went off all over the ship. Daniel gripped his chair as the whole world seemed to twist around him. Then everything went dark. The screens went blank. The lights went out. For a long, terrible moment, there was nothing but silence and darkness. Daniel could hear his own breathing. He could hear his heart pounding in his chest. He wondered if they were dead. Then, slowly, the lights came back on. The screens flickered to life. And Nathan Cole said words that would change everything. We are through. Captain, we made it. We are on the other side. The bridge was quiet for a long moment. Everyone stared at their screens, trying to understand what they were seeing. They had done the impossible. They had crossed a barrier that had killed 17 expeditions over 6,000 years. Daniel stood up slowly. His legs felt weak. Damage report, he said. Amanda checked her console. Some systems are offline, but nothing serious. The hull held together. We lost a few sensors on the outer shell, but all crew members are safe. No injuries reported. Katie let out a breath she had been holding. I cannot believe it. We actually made it. Nathan was already busy with his instruments. His eyes were wide, and his hands were shaking with excitement. Captain, you need to see this. There is something out here. Something big. Daniel walked over to the science station. On the screen, he saw a shape that made his mind struggle to understand what he was looking at. It was a ring. A massive ring floating in space. It was so large that it could have held a small moon inside it. How big is that thing? Daniel asked. Nathan ran his calculations twice before answering. About 3,000 kilometers across. The structure is made from a metal that I have never seen before. It seems to absorb light instead of reflecting it. That is why it looks so dark. Amanda joined them at the screen. Is anyone alive in there? I cannot detect any life signs, Nathan said. But there is power running through it. A lot of power. Whatever this thing is, it is still working. Daniel made a decision. Take us closer, slowly. I want to know everything about this structure before we do anything else. The Horizon's wake moved forward through empty space. The ring grew larger and larger as they approached. Up close, Daniel could see details on its surface. There were patterns carved into the metal, designs that looked like writing, but in no language he had ever seen. Captain, Katie said suddenly, we are receiving a signal. Someone is trying to talk to us. The bridge went silent. Everyone turned to look at the communication station. Can you understand it? Daniel asked. No, it is not in any known language. But wait. Katie worked with her equipment for a moment. It seems to be adapting. The signal is changing. I think it is trying to learn our language. A voice came through the speakers. It was deep and strange, not quite human, but somehow understandable. You have crossed the boundary. You are the first in 3,000 cycles to reach us. Identify yourselves. Daniel stepped forward and spoke clearly. This is Captain Daniel Price of the Earth vessel Horizon's Wake. We represent humanity. We come in peace. We are looking for knowledge. There was a long pause. The crew waited, barely breathing. Humanity, the voice said. We have no record of your species in our database. How did you cross the barrier? The energy should have destroyed your ship. We studied the barrier first, Daniel explained. We noticed that the energy goes up and down in a pattern. We waited for a moment when the energy was low and crossed during that window. We also built our ship with special materials that protected us. Another long pause followed. When the voice spoke again, it sounded different. There was something like surprise in it. You observed. You calculated. You found a solution. This is remarkable. In 6,000 years, hundreds of ships have tried to cross. All of them flew straight into the barrier without thinking. You are the first to actually study the problem before acting. Nathan whispered to Daniel. They sound impressed. The voice continued. We are the architects. Or rather, what remains of us. Our physical bodies died long ago. What you are speaking to is our stored consciousness. We have been waiting here for a very long time. Waiting for what? Daniel asked. Waiting for you. Or someone like you. Someone who could pass the test. A section of the giant ring began to glow. A door appeared where there had been solid metal before. It was large enough for the Horizon's Wake to fit through. You may enter, the voice said. We have much to discuss. Much to show you. Much to give you. Daniel looked at Amanda. She raised an eyebrow but said nothing. The choice was his to make. Katie, tell the crew what is happening. Let them know we are going inside the structure. He paused. And tell them that so far, everything is going well. The ship moved toward the opening in the ring. As they passed through, lights came on along the walls, guiding them deeper inside. The interior was massive, with corridors wide enough for creatures much larger than humans. They found a docking area and landed the ship. Daniel gathered a team of 6 people to explore. He brought Amanda, Nathan, Katie, and 2 security officers named Tony Barrett and Sam Collins. All of them carried weapons, though Daniel hoped they would not need them. The air inside the station was clean and fresh. It was a little cold, but comfortable enough. Their footsteps echoed through the empty halls. "This place is ancient," Nathan said, looking at his scanner. "My instruments say these walls are at least 2 million years old." "Maybe older." 2 million years, Amanda repeated. "That is before humans even existed on Earth." They walked for several minutes through the empty corridors. Then they entered a large chamber, and everything changed. The room was filled with light. In the center stood a figure. It was not solid but made of light, a projection of some kind. The being was tall, perhaps 4 meters high, with a body that had too many arms and eyes that seemed to look in every direction at once. "Welcome," the projection said. "I am the keeper of this place. I am the last voice of the architects." Daniel stepped forward. "You said you were waiting for us. What does that mean?" The projection moved its many arms in a gesture that might have meant anything. "Long ago, we were the most powerful species in the galaxy. We lived for billions of years. We built things that other species could not even imagine. But we grew old. We grew tired. We knew that our time was ending." Katie was recording everything with a small device. Nathan was scanning the projection, trying to understand how it worked. "Before we died," the projection continued, "we wanted to pass on our knowledge, our technology, our understanding of the universe. But we could not give it to just anyone. It had to go to a species that was worthy, a species that could use it well." "So you built the barrier," Amanda said. "As a test." "Yes, the barrier is not impossible to cross. It was never impossible. But it requires a species that is willing to think differently. A species that looks at a problem and finds a new solution instead of giving up. In all the years since we built it, only one species has passed the test. You." Daniel felt the weight of those words. Humanity had done something that no other species had managed in 6,000 years. Not because they were smarter or stronger, but because they were willing to try something new. "What happens now?" he asked. The projection looked at him with its many eyes. "Now we give you what we have been saving. Our technology, our weapons, our medicine, everything we learned in billions of years of existence. But first, you must understand something important. We did not create this test just to find worthy successors. We created it because the galaxy is in danger." "Danger from what?" Tony asked. It was the first time the security officer had spoken. "From them." The projection waved its arms, and the walls around them changed. Suddenly, they could see space, could see the galaxy spreading out in all directions. Stars and planets and civilizations. It was beautiful, but then Daniel saw something else. In the dark spaces between galaxies, something moved. Something vast and terrible. Shapes that seemed to eat the light itself. "The Devourers," the projection said. "They have destroyed countless galaxies. They consume everything in their path. Stars, planets, entire civilizations. They are coming here. They have been coming for a long time. And when they arrive, nothing in this galaxy will survive unless someone stops them." The room was silent. Daniel stared at the images of the Devourers and felt true fear for the first time since they crossed the boundary. "That is why we needed to find you," the projection said. "Only a species capable of crossing our barrier has any hope of fighting what is coming. Humanity passed the test. Now you must face the real challenge." Daniel stared at the images of the Devourers for a long time. The shapes were hard to look at. They seemed wrong, like something that should not exist. They moved through the darkness between galaxies, consuming everything they touched. "How long do we have?" he finally asked. The projection considered the question. "By your way of measuring time, perhaps 50 of your years. Maybe less. The Devourers do not move quickly, but they do not stop either. Once they set their course toward a galaxy, nothing has ever turned them away. Amanda stepped forward. You said you have technology to give us, weapons. Can they actually hurt these things? Yes, our weapons were designed specifically to fight the Devourers. We encountered them once long ago. We drove them back, but the cost was terrible. Most of our species died in that war. The survivors built this station and created the barrier. We knew the Devourers would return eventually. We knew someone would need to fight them again. Nathan had been studying the images on the walls. These creatures, he said, they look like they are made of energy rather than matter. How do you fight something like that? With weapons that can disrupt energy patterns. With shields that can block their attacks. With ships that can move faster than they can react. The projection gestured, and a new display appeared. It showed blueprints for machines and devices that looked incredibly advanced. All of this knowledge is stored here. We will give it to you freely. Katie was still recording everything. Why us? She asked. I mean, humanity has only been traveling in space for a few years. We are the youngest species in the galaxy. Why not give this to one of the older species? The Valkyrie have been around for 50,000 years. The projection made a sound that might have been laughter. The Valkyrie? They are old, yes, but they have not grown in 20,000 years. They have become comfortable, safe. They avoid risk at all costs. That is why they never tried to cross the barrier. They warned others not to try, but they never attempted it themselves. Daniel understood. You needed a species that was not afraid to take chances. Exactly. The Devourers cannot be defeated by careful plans and slow strategies. Fighting them requires creativity, bravery, the willingness to do things that seem impossible. We watched every species in the galaxy for thousands of years. We saw how they grew and changed. Most of them reached a point where they stopped taking risks. They became satisfied with what they had. But humans are different, Amanda said quietly. Humans are very different. Your species has only existed for a short time, but in that time, you have done remarkable things. You fought wars and made peace. You destroyed parts of your world and then worked to fix them. You failed again and again, but you never stopped trying. That is what the galaxy needs right now. The projection led them deeper into the station. They walked through chambers filled with machines that Daniel could not identify. Some of them hummed with power. Others sat silent, waiting to be awakened. This is the knowledge vault, the projection explained. Everything the architects ever learned is stored here. Medicine that can cure any disease. Technology that can travel between stars in moments instead of months. Weapons that can destroy planets or protect them. It is all here, waiting for you. Nathan looked like a child who had just discovered the biggest library in the universe. There must be millions of years of research here. It would take us centuries just to understand it all. You do not need to understand everything at once. We have prepared guides, simple explanations that will help you learn the most important things first. The weapons, the shields, the faster ships. Those are what you will need to fight the Devourers. Daniel had a troubling thought. If we take this technology back to our galaxy, the other species will want it too. There could be wars over who gets to use it. The projection nodded. That is a risk. But there is a greater risk if you do not share it. The Devourers will not care about your politics or your conflicts. They will consume everyone equally. The only way to survive is for all the species in your galaxy to work together. That will not be easy, Amanda said. Some of those species hate each other. They have been fighting for thousands of years. Then you must find a way to make them stop. That is another reason we chose humanity. You are new to the galaxy. You have no old enemies, no ancient grudges. The other species may be willing to follow you in ways they would never follow each other. They spent hours in the station, learning about the technology and the threat they faced. The architect's projection answered every question, explained every device, showed them everything they needed to know. Finally, Daniel gathered his team together. We need to decide what to do next. We have been given an incredible gift, but also an incredible responsibility. Tony spoke up. Sir, we came here looking for knowledge. We found more than we ever expected. But we also found out that the entire galaxy is in danger. We have to go back and warn everyone. Agreed, Sam said. The sooner we get home, the sooner we can start preparing. Katie nodded. I have recorded everything. Once we get back to Earth, scientists will be able to start studying this technology immediately. Nathan was less certain. There is so much here. If we leave now, we might miss something important. Maybe some of us should stay and continue learning. Daniel thought about it. The projection said we have about 50 years. That sounds like a long time, but it is not. We need to get back to our galaxy, share what we have learned, and start building defenses. Every day counts. He turned to the projection. Can we take copies of your data with us? All of it? Yes. We have prepared storage devices that can hold everything. They are designed to be compatible with your technology. The projection paused. But I must warn you of something. When you return to your galaxy, you will face resistance. The other species will not want to believe what you tell them. They've been safe for so long that they cannot imagine true danger. Some will call you liars. Others will try to take the technology for themselves. We will deal with that when it happens, Daniel said. Right now, we need to focus on getting home. The projection made that gesture again, the one that looked like a smile. You remind us of ourselves from when we were young. We were bold once, brave. We believed we could do anything if we tried hard enough. That is why we succeeded for so long. And that is why we believe humanity will succeed where we eventually failed. They loaded the data storage devices onto the Horizon's wake. There were hundreds of them, each one containing knowledge that would take years to fully understand. The ship's computers worked to translate the most important information into formats that humans could read. Before they left, Daniel stood one last time before the projection. Thank you, he said, for the knowledge, for the warning, for believing in us. Do not thank us yet, the projection replied. The real test is still ahead. Crossing the barrier was just the beginning. Now you must unite a galaxy that has never been united. You must build weapons and ships in less than 50 years. And then you must face an enemy that has destroyed countless civilizations across millions of galaxies. We will find a way, Daniel said. That is what humans do. We know. That is why we chose you. The projection began to fade. We will remain here, watching and waiting. If you need more guidance, return to this place. We will always be here for you. The Horizon's wake departed from the station. As they flew back toward the barrier, Daniel looked out the window at the vast ring growing smaller behind them. 6 months ago, they had left Earth as explorers looking for knowledge. Now they were returning as the only hope for an entire galaxy. It was a heavy burden to carry, but as Daniel looked at his crew, at their determined faces and steady hands, he knew they were ready. Humanity had always risen to meet its challenges. This would be the greatest challenge of all, but that just meant they would have to rise higher than ever before. The barrier loomed ahead of them, its lights dancing in the darkness. They had crossed it once. They would cross it again, and then the real work would begin. The Horizon's wake emerged from the barrier into familiar space. The crossing was easier this time because they knew what to expect. Within hours, signals from nearby space stations reached them. Word of their return spread quickly across the galaxy. Daniel had expected some attention. He had not expected what actually happened. Within 2 days, the Galactic Council called an emergency meeting. Every major species sent representatives. Ships from a dozen different civilizations gathered near the council station. Everyone wanted to know what the humans had found. Daniel stood in the great chamber of the Galactic Council. It was a massive room with seats rising in circles around a central platform. Representatives from every corner of the galaxy looked down at him. The Valkyrie ambassador sat in the front row, his 7 eyes focused intensely on the human captain. "You survived," the Valkyrie said. His voice was dry and old. "This is something that has never happened before. What did you find on the other side?" Daniel took a deep breath. He had practiced this speech many times during the journey home. But standing here, facing the leaders of civilizations thousands of years old, he felt very small. "We found the architects," he said. "Or what remains of them. They built the barrier as a test. They were looking for a species capable of thinking differently, of finding solutions to problems that seemed impossible." The chamber erupted in noise. Voices spoke over each other in dozens of languages. The translation devices struggled to keep up. The Macra delegate slammed his fist against his chair. The Macra were large beings, covered in thick scales, known for their short tempers. "The architects are a myth, a legend told to children. You expect us to believe you found them?" "I do not just expect you to believe me," Daniel replied calmly. "I can prove it." He signaled to Katie, who activated a display. Suddenly, the entire chamber was filled with images. The ring station, the projection of the architect, the knowledge vaults filled with technology. The recordings played for everyone to see. The chamber went silent. Even the Macra delegate had nothing to say. "The architects gave us their knowledge," Daniel continued. "Technology that is millions of years more advanced than anything in this galaxy. Weapons, shields, faster, ships, medicine, everything they learned in their long existence." The Thondrian representative, a thin creature with pale skin and large, dark eyes, leaned forward. "Why would they give this to you? Why humans? Your species has been traveling in space for less than 2 years. Because they needed a species that was not afraid to take risks. They watched this galaxy for thousands of years. They saw that most species had stopped growing, stopped pushing forward. They needed someone who would try things that seemed impossible." "This is insulting," the Valkyrie ambassador said. "You are saying that humans are better than species that have existed for tens of thousands of years?" "No," Daniel said firmly. "I am saying that humans are different. We are young and foolish, and we make many mistakes. But we also keep trying. We do not give up when things seem impossible. That is what the architects were looking for." Amanda stepped forward to stand beside her captain. "There is something else you need to know. Something more important than the technology." The chamber quieted again. "The architects did not create the barrier just to test us," Amanda said. "They created it because something is coming. Something that has destroyed countless galaxies. They called them the Devourers." The images on the display changed. Now they showed the terrible shapes that moved in the darkness between galaxies. The beings that consumed stars and planets and everything in their path. Fear spread through the chamber. Even the oldest and most powerful species looked shaken by what they saw. "The Devourers will reach this galaxy in about 50 years, Daniel said. "Maybe less. The architects fought them once and barely survived. They knew the Devourers would return. That is why they prepared this technology. That is why they waited for a species that could use it." The Macra delegate stood up. His scales had turned pale. "If these things are as powerful as you say, what chance do we have?" Even with this new technology? We have a chance if we work together, Daniel said. Every species in this galaxy. All of us fighting as one. The architects believed it was possible. They believed that if we unite, we can stop the devourers. Work together? The Valkyrie ambassador made a sound of disbelief. The Mekra and the Thondrians have been at war for 3,000 years. The Collective and the Republic have not spoken in centuries. You want all of us to suddenly forget our differences? Yes, Daniel said simply. Because if we do not, we will all die. The Devourers do not care about your wars or your politics. They will consume everyone equally. The only choice is whether we die fighting alone or survive fighting together. The chamber was quiet for a long moment. Daniel could see the representatives thinking, considering what he had said. Some looked angry. Some looked scared. A few looked thoughtful. Then something unexpected happened. A young delegate from a species Daniel did not recognize stood up. She was small, with blue skin and silver eyes. Her people had joined the Galactic Council only a few hundred years ago. My people have a saying, she said. When the flood comes, the animals do not fight over who drinks from the river. They climb to high ground together. I believe the human is right. This is a flood unlike anything we have ever faced. We must climb together or drown alone. Other young delegates began to stand. Representatives from species that had been looked down upon by the older civilizations. They had been ignored for years, their voices unheard. But now they were speaking. The humans crossed the barrier when no one else could, one said. Maybe we should listen to them. Our ancestors would have tried, another added. Before they became comfortable, before they forgot how to take risks. Maybe it is time to remember. The Valkyrie ambassador looked around the chamber. His 7 eyes blinked slowly. For the first time, Daniel saw doubt on his ancient face. This is a lot to consider, the ambassador said finally. We cannot make such decisions quickly. We need time to study this technology, to verify your claims, to discuss among ourselves. Time is the one thing we do not have much of, Daniel replied. 50 years sounds like a long time, but it is not. We need to start building ships and weapons now. We need to train soldiers and pilots. Every day we waste is a day we cannot get back. The Makra delegate surprised everyone by nodding. The human speaks truth. If this threat is real, we cannot afford to argue for years while it approaches. I propose we form a committee to examine the technology. Representatives from every species. Working together. It was not much, but it was a start. Daniel felt a small spark of hope. Getting these species to work together would not be easy. There would be arguments and setbacks and moments when it seemed impossible. But they had taken the first step. Over the next few weeks, the committee was formed. Scientists and engineers from across the galaxy came to study the architect's technology. At first, they were suspicious of each other. Old enemies worked in the same rooms, barely able to look at each other. But slowly, things began to change. A Valkyrie scientist discovered something amazing in the data and shared it with a Mekra engineer. Together, they solved a problem that neither could have solved alone. A Thondrian doctor found a cure for a disease that had plagued her people for centuries, and she shared it freely with everyone. Daniel watched it all happen. He saw species that had hated each other for thousands of years begin to cooperate. It was not perfect. There were still fights and disagreements. But underneath it all, something new was growing. Hope, unity, a sense that maybe, just maybe, they could face this threat together. Katie found Daniel one evening, standing on an observation deck, looking out at the stars. They are starting to believe, she said. I can see it in their eyes. They are scared, but they are also determined. Just like us. Daniel nodded. This is just the beginning. We have 50 years of work ahead of us. building ships, training crews, preparing for a battle that might destroy us all. But for the first time, I think we actually have a chance. Because they are working together? Because they finally have something to fight for. Not against each other, but for everyone. For the galaxy. For survival. Daniel smiled slightly. The architects were right. It just took the right push to make it happen. Somewhere out in the darkness, the Devourers continued their slow approach. But for the first time in thousands of years, the galaxy was not waiting helplessly. It was preparing. And leading that preparation was a young species from a small blue planet who had looked at an impossible barrier and decided to cross it anyway. 20 years had passed since the Horizon's Wake crossed the barrier. The galaxy had changed more in those 20 years than it had in the previous 1,000. Daniel Price stood on the bridge of the Defiance, the flagship of the United Fleet. He was 63 years old now. His hair had gone completely gray, and there were deep lines around his eyes. But those eyes were still sharp, still full of the same determination that had carried him through the barrier all those years ago. Dot around him. The bridge crew worked at their stations. Katie Morrison stood at communications, her own hair showing streaks of gray. She had served with Daniel for 2 decades, rising through the ranks to become one of his most trusted officers. Amanda Gray commanded her own ship now, leading a squadron of attack vessels. All ships are in position, Katie reported. 10,000 vessels from 12 different species. The largest fleet ever assembled in galactic history. Daniel looked at the view screen. The fleet spread out before him like a sea of lights. Human ships flew alongside Valkyrie cruisers. Macro battleships stood next to Thondrian carriers. 20 years ago, these species had been enemies. Now they fought as one. Nathan Cole's voice came through the communication system. He was aboard the research vessel Innovation, coordinating the scientists who would be analyzing the battle. Captain, we are detecting the Devourers at the edge of the system. They arrived earlier than we expected. How many? Daniel asked. Hundreds, maybe thousands. It is hard to get an exact count. They keep shifting and changing. Daniel had seen images of the Devourers many times over the past 20 years. He had studied them, planned for them, prepared his entire life for this moment. But seeing them in person was different. They were shapes of pure darkness, massive beings that seemed to absorb all light around them. They moved slowly but steadily, heading straight for the heart of the galaxy. All hands, Daniel said. His voice broadcast to every ship in the fleet. This is Admiral Price. 20 years ago, humanity crossed a barrier that everyone said was impossible. We found the architects and learned about the threat that was coming. We warned the galaxy, and together we have been preparing for this day. He paused, looking at the images of the Devourers on his screen. The creatures we face have destroyed countless galaxies. They have consumed civilizations that existed for millions of years. They believe nothing can stop them. Today, we prove them wrong. He nodded to Katie, who opened the channel to all ships. All squadrons advance. Attack pattern Alpha. Let us show these things what a united galaxy can do. The fleet moved forward. Human ships led the first wave, their new architect-designed shields glowing with energy. Behind them came the Valkyrie, their ancient vessels, now upgraded with weapons that could actually hurt the Devourers. The Makra formed the center of the formation, their heavy battleships ready to take the worst of the enemy's attacks. The first contact was violent beyond anything Daniel had imagined. The Devourers did not use weapons in any normal sense. They simply reached out and consumed. Ships that got too close simply ceased to exist, absorbed into the darkness. But the new shields held. The weapons worked. When the architect-designed cannons fired, they actually hurt the Devourers. For the first time in their long existence, these cosmic predators felt pain. Direct hit on the lead creature, Nathan reported excitedly. It is wounded. The weapons are working. Keep firing, Daniel ordered. Do not let up. Hit them with everything we have. The battle raged for hours. Ships were lost. Thousands of brave beings from dozens of species died fighting. But for every ship that fell, the fleet fought harder. The Devourers had never faced resistance like this. They had always consumed without opposition. They did not know how to handle creatures that fought back. Tony Barrett commanded a squadron of fast attack ships. He had stayed in the military after the first mission, training new pilots and preparing for this day. His voice came through the communication system. Admiral, we have found a weak point. The creatures are more vulnerable at their centers. If we can concentrate fire on specific targets, we can kill them. Show me, Daniel said, thought the tactical display updated. Tony was right. The Devourers had cores, points of concentrated energy that held them together. If those cores were destroyed, the creatures fell apart. All squadrons, new orders. Focus fire on the creature cores. Tony, your ships will mark targets. Everyone else, follow his lead. The battle shifted. Instead of trying to hurt the Devourers everywhere, the fleet concentrated its attacks on specific points. One by one, the massive creatures began to fall. Each time one died, it released a burst of energy that lit up the darkness like a new sun. Amanda Gray led her squadron into the heart of the Devourer formation. Her ship was small and fast, designed for exactly this kind of dangerous mission. I see their leader, she reported. The largest one. It is coordinating the others. If we can kill it, they might retreat. That is too dangerous, Daniel said. Amanda, pull back. Negative, Admiral. This is what we trained for. This is why humanity is here. We take the risks that no one else will. Her voice was calm. Steady. It has been an honor serving with you, Daniel. Her squadron dove toward the largest devourer. Other ships tried to follow, but they could not keep up. Amanda and her pilots flew straight into the darkness, their weapons firing continuously. For a long moment, there was nothing. Then a burst of light exploded from the center of the creature. The largest devourer shuddered and began to fall apart. When it died, the other devourers seemed to hesitate. For the first time in the battle, they stopped advancing. Amanda! Daniel called. Amanda, respond! Static filled the channel. Then, faintly, her voice came through. We are alive, barely. Lost half my squadron, but we are alive. And that thing is definitely dead. The Devourers began to retreat. Slowly at first, then faster. They had never been defeated before. They did not know how to handle this new reality. The creatures that had consumed countless galaxies were running away. The fleet let out a cheer that echoed across thousands of ships. Humans, Valkyrie, Mekra, Thondrians, and dozens of other species celebrated together. They had done the impossible. They had driven back the Devourers. Daniel sat down in his chair, suddenly feeling all of his 63 years. His hands were shaking. He had not realized how tense he had been. Katie walked over and put a hand on his shoulder. We did it, sir. We actually did it. The battle is won, Daniel said. But the war is not over. They will come back. They will try again. And we will be ready. We know how to hurt them now. We know how to kill them. Katie smiled. 20 years ago, you told the Galactic Council that we could survive if we worked together. You were right. Nathan's voice came through the speaker. Admiral, I am getting reports from across the fleet. The celebrations are incredible. Species that were enemies for thousands of years are cheering together. A Makra captain just embraced a Thondrian engineer. I have never seen anything like it. Daniel stood up and walked to the observation window. The stars spread out before him, the same stars that had called to him since he was a boy. Somewhere out there, beyond the boundary, the architect's station still floated in the darkness. They had chosen humanity to lead this fight, and humanity had not let them down. But Daniel knew the truth. It was not just humanity that had won this battle. It was the entire galaxy, working together for the first time in history. Humans had started it, had pushed everyone to cooperate. But in the end, it was a victory for all of them. "Sir," Katie said, "you should say something. The whole fleet is waiting." Daniel nodded. He activated the fleet-wide channel. "This is Admiral Price. Today, we won a great victory. We proved that the Devourers can be stopped. We proved that when we stand together, there is nothing we cannot face. But I want to be clear about something. This was not a human victory. This was a victory for every species that fought here today. A victory for the Volcari, the Mekra, the Thondrians, and all the others. A victory for the galaxy." He paused, gathering his thoughts. 20 years ago, humanity was the youngest species in known space. We were looked down upon, dismissed as children playing at being explorers. But we crossed a barrier that everyone said was impossible, and we brought back a warning that saved us all. Today, I am proud to stand alongside every species in this fleet. We are no longer separate civilizations. We are one galaxy, one people, united against any threat that comes our way." He looked out at the stars one more time. "The Devourers will return someday. Other threats will emerge. The universe is vast and full of dangers we cannot imagine. But whatever comes, we will face it together. That is the lesson of this day. That is what humanity learned when we crossed the boundary. And that is what will keep us all safe for generations to come." The channel closed. Daniel turned away from the window and saw his crew smiling at him. Katie, Nathan, Tony, and all the others who had believed in this mission from the beginning. "What now, sir?" Katie asked. Daniel smiled. "Now we go home. We rebuild. We prepare. And we keep pushing forward, just like we always have. The boundary was just the first barrier we crossed. There will be others. And we will cross them all." The Defiance turned toward home, leading a fleet of 10,000 ships from 12 different species. Behind them, the darkness of space stretched out forever, full of mysteries and dangers and one.